So what we're going to cover in our first series is a lot of the commonly asked questions with solar. Of course, the first thing on most people's mind is, what does it cost to go solar? And that's really the hardest thing to quantify, because to most folks, the price per watt that we talk about in the business doesn't really mean anything to you as a consumer. We've had systems as small as $8,000 and $10,000 that made a nice dent in the folks' electric bill, in some cases satisfying all they needed. And we've had other systems where they've dropped almost six figures into solar and still had an electric bill. A lot of commercial projects are a good example where, the largest systems you see out there tend to be 2 or 3% of their annual energy. But solar is really a great investment. You're looking at between 8 and 14% on your rate of return for the dollars invested. And that's really where I encourage people to look at for, grid tied solar, leaving batteries, leaving prepper desires out of it. Grid tied solar, where your smartest money is, your 8 to 14% return, and then that can be boosted by local incentives or other combination package deals where maybe you have an electric water heater, and so instead of doing a huge solar system, we sell you a small system and give you a free electric water heater upgrade to a heat pump water heater. And in a lot of cases, you'll spend less dollars, you'll end up having a lower electric bill as the end result, and you'll actually have a better return on investment. There's three main cost breakdown dividers, if you will, in your solar adventure. And that would typically end up being whether you're just a straight grid tie system, whether you're a grid tie with battery backup, or whether you're a full-on off-grid system. So your price per watt is how almost all systems are priced out in the industry. But again, for most folks, it doesn't really help them all that much. To put it in just dollars and cents, for as little as $10,000, you can typically knock out a $40 to $60 a month bill throughout the year. If that's all your bill was, and your power company's reasonable with how they play ball with you and having solar, then that could be all it takes. And I've had several customers that, they didn't keep their house too cold in the summer, and they had, gas for heat in the winter, and that was literally all they needed, and they just loved it, and it worked great for them. The second side of solar, you're typically looking at your grid tied with battery backup. And at that point, you have to talk about, well, what am I battery backing up? So for most people, we're going to talk about a $15,000 starting budget as just a conversation starter. That's going to get you your fridge and your lights, enough solar to recharge that. But because we're, focusing more of those dollars in batteries than on the roof and solar, you're not going to save as much money as you would have if you just had the $10,000 system we talked about first and just grid tied. And so you're spending more money and getting a little less payback, but you've got that peace of mind of the battery system. Now, the third and final typical, defining line on solar is the off-grid systems. And off-grid is really a niche market. We get more and more folks calling on us because we're one of the few that actually do off-grid and do it well. One of the challenges with off-grid is you really have to look at the whole house approach. You have to really understand building mechanics, how everything comes together as an entire system, because in many cases, if you're just doing the energy and you don't critique what the customer's putting in that house, they're going to end up putting electric water heaters, electric stoves, and the cheapest appliances in, and then calling you when it's running out of power because you didn't do your job as Mr. Power Guy. So, the best systems that we love from an off-grid standpoint are when we get to package in a all-in mechanicals solar package. Our main goal here is to help educate you on the subtle nuances where, especially in our area of expertise, which is, East Texas, Texas as a whole has a very unique electric infrastructure, and we're very familiar with, East Texas and all of the variety of co-ops and the Encore service area. If you're in differing states, you have to be really careful about what your rules are, and we've helped a lot of customers navigate the nuances in Louisiana, Oklahoma, and several neighboring states, but you have to be very careful about how you proceed with grid-tied solar, because when you're making energy on a pretty day and you can't use it all, if the power company won't play ball and give you a reasonable payback for that energy, or if the power company charges you a $50 a month fee for the privilege of connecting solar to their grid, it could change the whole dynamic of whether or not you should do solar, whether or not you really need to go big or go home. In some cases, the math really does work out that way, that if you have to cut the cord basically to go solar because the power company rules are so obtuse, for lack of a better term.